Hello and welcome to the IT News Podcast, brought to you by SysDig and the 2024 State of Security Report. I'm Marc, Editor-in-Chief of IT News. Stay tuned until the end as we dive into how managing cloud security requires a new approach. Anthony Leverington from SysDig discusses how real-time detection and response are essential components of an effective cloud security strategy. But first, we go behind the scenes with Western Australia Police Force, exploring 2 years of simplifying and elevating its technology function and capabilities, culminating in one of the largest ICT tenders in the country being put to market.
It'd be useful, I think, just for me to understand a bit more about the IT organisation for WA Police Force in terms of the size or the structure or how it's organised, if that makes sense.
The journey that technology as a portfolio has been on inside WA Police over the last 2 years has probably risen a lot more to the forefront of the executive leadership. A lot of the aspirational work that we want to do in terms of supporting and keeping the community safe and supporting our officers is going to be driven largely through technology as one of the critical enablers to make that happen. Part of the journey that we've been on over the last 12 months or so has been around, reorganizing ourselves a little bit to help to cope with that demand and also to deliver better services a bit more efficiently. And to that extent, our core technology team itself is only about 128 people in terms of police staff, plus about 30 or 40 police officers come and go into our projects at any one time. But most of how we deliver on that aspiration is we need a variety of partners that come to the table to help us get skill and scale, whether that's deep technical expertise in certain areas or actually how we operate. So part of our journey of the last 12 months has been getting that model to work a lot more efficiently so that we can set ourselves up for the innovation that is coming down the pipeline.
When you mentioned reorganization just there, is that really just in terms of the way that you're structuring for different types of technology that you're introducing to operational capability? How would you describe that process?
It's got two facets to it. First and foremost, it's actually how we serve the agency. Internally, we're an enabler and a service provider, so it's helping us better align to those specific facets that police officers come to us for support. And then under the hood is the various flavors of technology that we deploy. We've got to organize our capability around that. So I guess it was a little bit more federated before. The actual technology operating model structure itself was more of your agile teams. We've tried to actually consolidate that so that we can actually build some skill and scale and ensure that we actually have the right people, the right mindset, the right strategic planning in place. For us, it's about a little bit of simplification in operating model terms. It's about coming back more towards a traditional plan, build, run type organization so that one, it helps us with the delivery, but also it helps us with how we lock into all the other funding mechanisms that we have in government at large. So it means that you're a lot more selective and targeted on where you're going to be putting in your investment.
What would you consider the key pillars of the IT strategy for the organization?
If you zoom out just a little and say, what's the agency's demand on our IT strategy? So why are we responding with this IT strategy? The agency's asking for us to do three really important things. First is all about resilience and cybersecurity. We are a mission critical organization. Everything we do needs to operate when everything else is not working. So a lot of our focus is on that resilience and security aspect. The second aspect, which is where a lot of our transformation is going to come, is that a lot of our police officers do work out in the field. So how do we keep them mobile and ensure that they don't have administrative burden coming back into the office? We do a lot of our work from a vehicle, so it's making them very effective when they're in that scenario. That's part of our mobility strategy. Most people see mobility as an app on a phone. For us, it's actually an app on a phone is one aspect of it. It's also how do we integrate them into their vehicle? How do we bring data into a vehicle? How do we use things like our body-worn cameras to bring in other types of analytics and forms of information? So it's that whole experience around the officer being mobile rather than just a mobile app. And then the third area is all around responsible information sharing. It's good for us to have access to data, but to bring that data into context at the right time in front of the right people so that we can make either the appropriate risk assessments or share the appropriate aspects of the information that is available. So it's really probably our biggest area of innovation. And it's not just growing inside policing itself. It's also how do we work with our various partner agencies like health and communities to make sure that the right information is shared across the boundaries.
Just on the mobility side, I can remember a few years ago when WA Police was talking about mobility and I think introducing fleets of iOS-based devices to the organisation. Is that the same program of work broadly or has it evolved since then?
It certainly has evolved quite a bit more. Some of that early innovation proves up some of those concepts and tests around how either the device and the capture or the user experience is going to evolve. I think from those learnings, we're actually looking at it more now as a holistic integrated solution. Everything from vehicle telemetry, GPS, your tasking that you're going to be issuing out to a police officer, the mobile phones, the body worn. How do we bring all of that together so that it's actually one system as opposed to 10 detached systems that we then need to try and work out how to integrate behind the scenes? As you can imagine, when you've got everything from your legacy technologies to your most contemporary IoT solutions in the cloud, it's quite a nightmare to try and bring all of that together. So we've got to look at it as one system. And that's why platform strategy is so important, so that we become a little bit more agnostic about the devices that we choose and the systems that we choose and focus on keeping them more interoperable rather than standalone silos.
Just on the integration side, how are you looking at that? Are you looking at that from like a data layer perspective in terms of wanting some sort of mesh architecture, in terms of trying to bring all these different kind of data sources together? How are you looking to create that integrated single experience within the car or whatever environment they're in?
Certainly, just because we've got partly some of the legacy, but also we've got some mission critical systems, there is a strong facet of how we do natural integration, just so that we actually have control system style handshakes and management. But in terms of data or information sharing at large, we're taking inspiration from a mesh architecture so that we can inspire and really allow the agency itself to manage its data. This is, I think, probably one of the biggest cultural hurdles that organizations need to jump through. Is data is not the job of technology, it's the job of the agency. We just provide the platforms and the tooling to make that happen. And for us, one side of the architecture could be very centralized, small group of people, of data engineers building out pipelines and products, but that gets very slow very quick. If you want good ownership, we're trying to move a little bit more towards that mesh style architecture. We probably haven't gone quite as far as what some of the modern literature is thinking about it, just because we have some strong governance rules and security requirements around data. That means that at least we can ensure that we got those protocols and guardrails set up.
Presumably there's a limited amount of data owners within a police force compared to a regular enterprise, where data ownership is much more distributed, and where going to more to the nth degree in terms of a mesh architecture would be more suited.
We're still growing on that journey. We'll probably find the number will be somewhere between 5 and 8 macro data owners. That's the scope of the domains that we have. And it also mirrors a little bit of the organizational structure, which is good because it means that all our other governance practices come into play. It's not something new. It's just how people are used to working with it. The challenge is more getting portfolios to become used to working with and overseeing data engineers and maybe at one point in time data scientists. It's a very different skill set to manage if you haven't managed a technical skill set like that before.
The conversation now shifts to WA Police's decision to test the market for hundreds of millions of dollars of IT and application services, with Marc talking us through this significant program of work.
If you look at the agency's demand, a lot of what we're trying to do is set ourselves up to help to manage this demand going forward. If you look at that plan, build, run methodology, a lot of what the sourcing component focuses on is on that run aspect. The biggest thing in the run side of the business is keep the lights on in a very sustainable and effective way. It's ICT services to manage at large everything that is involved in running that. If you look at all our frontline services, all our enabling infrastructure, so that's data centers, comms, as well as then our functional work. So that's what I call out as the enterprise work, which is your ERPs and productivity tools and things like that. That tends to pick up the gravity of the conversation, but actually what we're trying to illustrate is that's only 50% of the job. The other 50% is how do you create headroom for all the new stuff that's coming at you and transition all that work in. So that's what these packages are actually about, is maintain, create headroom, but also help delivery teams operationalize and productionize those technologies so that the teams can move on to new projects and new innovations.
So do you want to talk a little bit about the tender itself and how you've approached this process? Because these have been agreements that have been in place for a long period of time. I'm sure there's a lot of familiarity internally in terms of the way things operate and run. How have you approached getting to this point where you're able to go out to market for these packages of work?
I think a lot of it is that context that I've been talking about in terms of the agency strategy, our tech strategy, and then our operating model has almost been the sequence that we've gone through to try and drive some alignment. And then for us to have a look at what's available to us in the marketplace in terms of how we want to set the service packages up. The journey has been around understanding what's important to the agency, then assessing what is the delivery models and the operating models that we want to work under, and then having some really good, robust debate about what's the best way to structure our request to the market. Coming out for 6 service packages is a product of that thinking, recognizing what the market can offer us, but also the emphasis on what support we need in particular areas, as opposed to coming out for one prime vendor to do it all. This is the dichotomy of that. So part of us doing that work is trying to understand how we actually group that together in an effective way such that we can support those innovation outcomes, but then also get that value for money and make it sustainable for the partners that might be bidding.
The way you've separated the work, just to drill into that a little bit more, you've basically had those discussions internally, but you've also tried to, I guess, examine how those specific ecosystems might evolve over the next number of years, or how you'd like to see them evolve over the next number of years, specifically like where you divided the application services, for example, by vendor ecosystem, I think by SAP and Oracle. You've had a look at what the kind of roadmaps are and how you might want to lock into some of the changes that have happened within those ecosystems.
I think it's two parts. So one is absolutely understanding where are those vendors going, what is the capability, and what's the partner ecosystem around those capabilities. And then also it's influenced us from a technology strategy point of view, where we've probably come from a very disparate set of technologies, where you've probably got every flavor of technology under the sun. What we've been trying to do is consolidate that so that we can actually get maybe two focus areas, certainly our productivity and our operational technologies, and then helping us simplify our tech strategy along those two threads. And the reason being is we want sustainability. We don't want these purple unicorns floating around where everything is down to one or two people that only understand how to compile a Fortran code. We want to make sure that we can actually build career paths for our people as well as our partners around some of these technology streams. And because we fall back onto resilience, we don't tend to introduce technologies that are right beyond the bleeding edge. We work with them, we learn, but we don't productionize them until we are confident that we have a sustainable pathway to service that technology.
One of the tender packages out of the 6 was specifically around cybersecurity. You mentioned also cybersecurity and resilience in terms of the focus areas. Do you want to just talk a little bit about breaking cybersecurity out as a specific package of work?
So I think cybersecurity, if you look back over the last 5 or 7 years, it's been an interesting journey to watch how organizations mature in the space, because they tend to start cybersecurity as almost like an audit and risk piece, and then it goes into information management, and then you realize you've got technology dependency. So we've gone on that journey where you've had the aspects of cyber strategy and threat management, and then security operations. If you look at those two key things, they've had to mature inside the organization. And this is part of our operating model, is where we've actually brought them together and built that as a deliberate capability inside technology as the natural home for that skill set. We've got to spend a lot more time around setting policy, setting direction and maturity. Security operations is something that you can create as quite an efficient capability set. But for us, the threat landscape is changing quite a bit all the time. Part of putting that deliberately into the technology operating model has been us bringing the focus to it, but then also bringing in, I look at cybersecurity as risk management. It's one of our biggest risks that we manage. You can't just deal with cybersecurity. We actually have to deal with all things risk management around technology. So we actually built a capability around that, of which cyber has a natural home in that risk management and enterprise risk management capability.
Once the tender is released, what kind of responses are you hoping to elicit?
The response we're looking for is ICT services. It's very much the service management, maintenance and operations side of the house. And what we're going to do is become efficient so that we can drive innovation in there. What we want to do is make sure that they're nice and simple and clear to manage. If you think about all the facets of what goes into a contemporary services arrangement, that's probably what we're after, is good, robust performance, good, robust SLAs, contract commercial management that wraps into that. And then part of us getting scale is about being quite deliberate on what we want in the ICT services side, so that we can implore or invite multiple partners up in the innovation area as well.
The idea basically is by mid-2026, when the existing arrangements expire, that you'll have the new setups and the new contracts in place.
Yeah, so there's obviously a bit of planning and sequencing to do the transition. The transition's never going to be straightforward, but that's why there's a bit of headroom in the timing, is to make sure that we can actually allow that to take place, and then also make the incoming partners successful. We've got to set them up for success.
Traditional detection and response tools are not able to keep up with the threats of a cloud-based world where many applications are being built with cloud-native services, often containerized and ephemeral in nature. While the cloud offers substantial benefits to organizations, it also presents a greater attack surface for malicious attackers to probe and exploit. Anthony Leverington, Regional Director for ANZ and ASEAN at CISTIG, says approaches that worked in the past need to be revisited and modernized to mitigate the threats to cloud-based environments, which can strike faster than ever before.
Historically, organisations have structured their security efforts around specialised teams, such as a SecOps team or a SOC team. When it comes to threat detection, the approach taken by these teams has been to firstly secure the endpoint, as this has been historically the origin of most attacks, and secondly, to collect all the logs from multiple data sources and then send these logs to a central location or an aggregator. Once all the logs are collected, they're typically analysed by a central team who often need to write queries against this data to extract the important information so that organisations can identify the real threats. The challenge with this approach is that organisations are adopting public cloud. And as a result, more and more applications are being built using cloud-native services. And because of this, the attack surface of our applications is now significantly larger.
In a cloud-native or hybrid cloud world, time is of the essence, as many cloud resources only exist for a short time. Processes which used to take hours now need to be executed in minutes or seconds.
The 2024 CISTIG Cloud Native Security and Usage Report has found that 70% of containers now have a lifespan of 5 minutes or less. So we need to be asking ourselves, do we have the appropriate tools and processes to identify a threat with these newer types of technologies? Our research shows that the average time taken for a cloud attack is only 10 minutes. In fact, last year, the CISTIG threat research team uncovered an attack named Scarlet Hill that involved lateral movement from workloads into cloud assets. And this attack was executed in under 4 minutes. So that's 4 minutes that organizations have to detect, triage, and to respond to such an attack. Can we afford to wait several hours for all our logs to be collected and aggregated into a central location before we identify that an attack is taking place?
Organizations need to look for real-time detection and response to protect their cloud environments.
A better approach would be to integrate seamlessly into this stream of logs, effectively functioning like a pre-seen cache. This would allow you to detect threats in real time, giving you a greater chance to stop any malicious behavior quickly and effectively. We recently came across a case where an organization who had a monthly cloud spend of around $30,000 suddenly received a bill from their public cloud provider for $300,000. And this is because a malicious actor had deployed thousands of containers inside of their environment to mine cryptocurrency. And all of this was simply due to a cloud misconfiguration. Real-time detection capabilities would have detected the presence of this crypto miner in milliseconds, allowing the organization to detect and remediate before there were any significant impacts. CISTIG has conducted thorough research to address the challenges of cloud security, resulting in a new benchmark named the 555. The 555 translates to 5 seconds to detect, 5 minutes to correlate and triage, and 5 minutes to respond to an attack. This benchmark is designed to help organizations transition their security practices to address these new types of challenges.
Anthony says there are 3 key steps for building an effective cloud security strategy.
At CISTIG, we recommend 3 steps for an effective cloud security strategy. Firstly, adopting a comprehensive unified platform, then focusing on active risks as well as static risks, and finally, using the 555 benchmark for an effective cloud security program. We believe effective cloud security requires a comprehensive unified platform that integrates vulnerability management, runtime threat detection, cloud posture management, as well as entitlements and permissions management. It's important to correlate the risks with, for example, vulnerabilities in your workflows and cloud misconfigurations, because an event or a risk in isolation may not look like much, but when combined with other events could indicate malicious activity.
Effective risk and vulnerability management in the cloud demands a real-time approach. The days of being able to collate, correlate, and analyze log data in hours are behind us. Without a platform that shrinks the time between detection and response to minutes or seconds, organizations can be caught out by savvy threat actors.
That's it for this fortnight's episode. Please let us know what you think by reviewing the IT News podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts from. Your feedback is greatly appreciated and helps us create better content catered to you, our listeners. And for all the latest headlines and happenings in Australian technology news, and all the trends from our latest State of Security report, visit itnews.com.au.